And here's the thing, guys. If you ever feel like you have to impress women by shitting on your fucking friends, A, it says a lot about who the fuck you are. And B, most good women don't want to be around that insecure ass shit. What's going on, guys? I'm Alan K, and welcome to the ShiftEQ.Podcast with Alan K. Now, if you are like a previous version of me and find yourself having to tolerate or tolerating currently your friends' negative mindset, you got to tolerate the pessimism and the hate whenever you bring up something that's going well for you. And overall, you're probably contemplating if having that friendship even serves you. Well, my friends, this episode might be for you. And in this episode, I'm going to go over the 5 attributes that I find myself gravitating towards, that I find to be serving. In other words, I view my friends as people that I voluntarily keep around me, that I voluntarily keep in contact with. And I've noticed that over the years, I have been through God knows how many different friend groups and amount of people that I've considered to be friends. From being in the Navy for almost 13 years, having lived in South Carolina, Rhode Island, New Mexico, Vegas, San Diego, all the while traveling the world 3 times over via deployments, and being part of various different industries such as poker, now bodybuilding, and all the other random industries that I happen to run into in between. I've met my very fair share of people, and I'd argue probably more than most. And in that time, and meeting all the different people, as much as there are huge differences in the different industries, the different locations, the different settings, I have noticed there's actually a lot of similarities with how people behave, with how people show up. And although some friends, and the majority of them, probably 95 to 98% of them, have come and go, the 2% that I have kept with me over time, they all attribute, or they all exhibit, these 5 attributes that I'm going to go over. And now a lot of these are going to come with stories. Majority of them are going to be bad, only because I've noticed that a lot of my learning lessons comes in lieu of things going wrong. And these aren't a bad thing, right? Moving on from people isn't a bad thing. Finding out that you're different from someone and that relationship no longer serves you isn't a bad thing. But before we get into what all that means, and before we get into the meat and potatoes, the bulk of this episode, I'm going to go over a few things. As usual, I'm going to go over my comp, going to go over content. And in content, not only am I going to go over the docuseries that is highlighting the comp, but I did want to actually dive into one of the things that's really starting to, for lack of a better way of saying it, grinding my gears on social media. And I'm going to go into why it's starting to grind my gears and why it's starting to become disheartening. And then I'm going to go into the meat and potatoes of this episode, the 5 things. And it's interesting because the content that I'm going to be speaking about actually has to play into one of the attributes that I wanted to highlight with regards to the close people that I keep in my life and the people that I trust. But all right, so now before we get into that, we are 2.5 weeks from comp. And by the time this episode comes out, it'll probably be about less than 2 weeks. What I find really interesting is I just weighed in at 134.2 pounds at 6.7% body fat. Back in February, I was 134.6 pounds at 9.3% body fat. So in about 2 months, a little over 2 months, I've lost 0.4 pounds, but then lost 2.6% body fat. I'll be the first one to tell you guys, all I do is stick to a plan. All I do is stick to the plan that my coach gets me. All I do is find ways to curb my habits and my behaviors to execute that plan on a daily basis, whether that's planning ahead, whether that's having a meal prep 4 days out, whether that's trying to find a gym and planning for workouts 4 days, 3 days, a week in advance, however it may or may not be. The only thing I do is execute. And it's interesting because I always get, oh, what do you do different? What do you do that? Like, I don't know what I'm doing different than you, because all I'm doing is following my plan. Like, are you following the plan that your coach got you? Are you even in competition prep? Like, one of the things I find very interesting is people that don't compete, that don't even train like they compete, but then find themselves having to compare competitors to themselves, and they wonder why they don't get the same results. Like, you cannot complain about the results that you didn't get from the work that you didn't do. And if you don't train like a bodybuilder, then you won't look like a bodybuilder. And I feel like that's what one of the more interesting things about today's diets and people's approaches is, although they want these results, these extreme results, they don't want to put in the extreme work. You know, there's a reason why bodybuilders have their own label. They have their own narrative, because everybody knows the extra work that you got to put in. Now, for me, I view that as necessary work, because that's the sport that I compete in. That is what I love, and that's my interest right now. But I remember before I even got into competing, I remember asking bodybuilders, oh, what do you eat? What do you work out? What supplements do you take? And I remember I was asking, if I look at it now, right, I was never really asking so that I can adjust to be like them. What I did was ask them so that I can still stay with what I'm doing and be validated and making sure what I'm doing is right. And I've noticed a lot of people, when they ask that question, so what are you doing? What are you doing that's different? What are you doing that's cutting? What are you doing? Like, I'm only doing what my plan tells me. But usually that question is a projection from what they're doing. And they ask, well, what can I do that's different? Like, I don't know. I don't know what the fuck you're doing. You know, but really ask yourself, like, if you want a bodybuilder's build, are you working out like a bodybuilder? And if you're not, then you probably won't look like a bodybuilder. Sounds nuts, right? But you legit will not get the results from the work that you didn't do, and you can't complain about it when you don't get there. Now, our training is still, weight-wise, still 5 times a week, but cardio is up to 6 times a week. So right now it's like Monday through Thursday, I do cardio in the morning, and then I take Friday off from cardio, but then I lift Friday, I lift Saturday, and then Sunday is just a cardio day. In other words, it's a lot of volume right now. And it needs to be emphasized with this, because the result that I have right now is due to like hitting the gym twice a day and getting down to like to the gram, to the ounce for macros. And I'll be honest, it's not sustainable. If it wasn't for competing, I would never be eating like this. I would never be training like this. I would never be at this 6% body fat, which I'll tell you, this is an all-time new low for me. I'm still adjusting to being a lean and aesthetic persona in a bodybuilding world. I still view my body as like a science fair project. And it's interesting because once you get abs, once you have a physique, people just assume you've been like that your entire life. And no, I still, on the inside, still identify as that fatty from 2011, correction, 2008, 2009, from when my second daughter was born. And being over 200 plus pounds, I remember that insecurity still. I still remember not having control with what I was eating, not having control with how I was working out or my weight. And every single time I stepped on a scale, it felt like a gamble, because I didn't know which direction it was going to go. And I still remember that. And I still identify with that in some dynamic. And I got to tell you, I think that's a lot of the reason why I'm so astringent to this diet plan, to this meal plan, and why I love bodybuilding so much is because I experienced the other end of it. And instead of putting all that energy towards stressing myself out, towards being upset and not satisfied, might as well put that same energy towards building a physique that if I'm going to be stressed out, might as well be stressed out for the right reasons. If I'm going to put all this energy into feeling a certain way, might as well feel empowered by it. And that's what I would encourage all of you to do. Now, my cravings, though, I got to tell you, my cravings are fucking bizarre. Recently, I was at work. I was at a university working on one of their systems. And in the room was a student with a cookie from across the room. And I could literally hear the wrapper being unwrapped. I can hear them biting into that delicious morsel of chocolate chip cookies, and I could smell it from across the room. It's kind of at that rate. And to be honest with you, this is the longest I've gone without eating any kind of sweets. In the past 2 competitions, I was eating like little fun size Hershey's and fun size Crunch bars and fun size this, fun size that. And I'll tell you, regardless of if it's fun size or not, you have 8 or 9 of them, it's no longer fun size. It's an actual king size bar, but because you eat it in such small moderation, you don't even notice it sometimes. And yeah, so right now I got to tell you, the biggest craving I have is certain sweets, and specifically like a maple old-fashioned donut, cinnamon toast crunch cereal, and whatever variation of cookies, like Oreo cookies, Chips Ahoy. Like the sweets train is absolutely bizarre. Like I'm happy that we are only 2 weeks away from comp because I can hold off. But if I was 2 months from comp, I don't know if I'd be able to push those sweets away. You know what I mean? Like it's all relative. And although I'm feeling like as optimistic as hell about this, and although I have the Caesars buffet planned for right after the competition, I cannot deny that these cravings are absolutely bizarre. They are absolutely bizarre. All right. All right, that's the comp. Oh, content wise, right? Then we'll get into the meat and potatoes. I don't know why I'm on stickler saying meat and potatoes right now, but again, food cravings, man. Maybe it's like the fries and ketchup of it. No, that would be a side. I don't know. We'll work on a better phrase than meat and potatoes, but stick with me on that one. We're going to say meat and potatoes for now. All right, so content wise, a couple of things I really wanted to highlight with regards to content. First one being, I was on a podcast a couple of weeks ago. It was the Current Podcast. Big shout out to those guys. Really, really good group of guys. And they asked me about what advice I'd give on fat loss or what advice I'd give with regards to working out. And I immediately started talking about fasted workouts, fasted cardio. As some of you guys may or may not know, I attribute fasted workouts and fasted cardio as a major catalyst to my initial transformation as I was getting ready for a bodybuilding competition and a marathon. You know, I would get up in the morning, drink a cup of coffee, and I would run and get ready for the marathon. And in the evening, I would lift to get ready for the competition. And a lot of that, you know, a lot of the fat loss that I cut down, like I said, I started 170 some odd pounds, got down to 130. A lot of that entire training cycle was fasted cardio, fasted cardio, fasted cardio. And then there were times where I did fasted lifts. But when I said that, when I mentioned that on that respective podcast, I started speaking about cortisol. I started speaking about certain other hormones in your body where although studies have shown that when you have certain levels of hormones spiking and you work out in lieu of those, your body composition can change drastically. I decided to say something along the lines of cortisol levels and working out with them specifically. And in other words, I just started speaking about things that are relatively true, but you can very much tell I didn't know what the hell I was talking about. I think a lot of us sometimes, and I know me especially, get caught into saying something, and instead of trying to spit out what is exactly in my head, I go blank. And then to make up for the lack there of being able to say something smart, intelligible, or something that you actually know, I just start speaking and start saying words and start saying things that sound cool and to the point where they don't even question because they don't know. And I definitely, it's a huge pet peeve of mine. It's a huge pet peeve of mine. And it wouldn't be such a huge pet peeve had I not exhibited that behavior to begin with. And that's why I went on there. And if you look at it recently, I went on there and called myself out, as well as talk about why I was wrong. I wish we would do that a lot more in the fitness space. I wish we would, instead of just taking people's words at face value, kind of look into what they're saying and don't just take it for Bible. Don't just take it as an automatic, the right answer just because of a following, just because of a physique, just because of an image. Like the amount of people and the amount of misinformation that is out there is so bizarre. But because there's no real regulation on how to properly talk about creating better habits or better workouts or better this, you can, if you have an image, you can just about say anything because it says that you have the results. But more often than not, I see people just selling labels, selling rhetorics, and selling triggering words, all for the sake of selling a product, selling themselves in some dynamic. And that's why I would encourage you, and not only am I discouraged by certain quote unquote influencers saying the wrong shit and talking about shit that they don't know, or things that aren't congruent with what they're doing. Like for example, I'll see roided out influencers that constantly just talk about creatine and protein and, oh, you got to get your creatine and protein. And yeah, you could tell that's what they do. But obviously the main reason of why they got to the result is not those supplements. It's something else. The same thing happens with all these, labels and rhetorics. Like I cannot begin to tell you how many times I've been chastised about my carb intake when it comes to getting ready for competition and cutting down. And it always comes from people that have no idea. It always comes from people that don't have a result. But because they have a certain slew of influencers that promote no carbs this, or the supplements that they're taking is no carb that, and they have so lodged in themselves that carbs are the devil, I get chastised by it, even though that I have the result that they want. And it's very interesting. It's very interesting. Now, I'm not saying you have to have the result to be able to speak about things from an intellectual standpoint, but there are certain things in life that the only way you're credible to speak on it is by having that experience of being there. Which brings me to my next point, and the things that really, really starting to grind my gears, and what's really starting to persist and flowing over into regular life. And that is the abnormally high amount of validation that is, how else do I say it? The overwhelming, abnormally high amount of validation that is starting to supersede real value. In other words, we are starting to care more about followers, likes, and shares than we are of actual real value. I remember one of my old roommates a while back. I just overheard him. I overheard him on the phone, and he had talked about how one of his posts went viral, quote unquote. And what it was he was just going on his TikTok, speaking about something with men and their feelings. Mind you, I agreed with the message. I thought it was very heartfelt. But you could tell that he was just doing it because it's what was popular to talk about. It was something that he had overheard from something else, and it wasn't coming from him. But because that's what social media is promoting at the time, you see a lot of those red pill, blue pill kind of shit. You see the manosphere. You see all those things that where men talk about the mental challenges and the emotional challenges that is to become a man or to be a man. And again, it was really interesting because he said it, but then he's talking about, yeah, I went viral. I'm starting to understand the algorithm. I'm going to get famous. And then, I'm going to have to not worry, blah, blah, blah. And it's crazy because that's what we care about. We care about how many followers can we get? How many views can this post get? How many likes can this get? But what are you fucking providing? What are you actually providing? What have you done with your life where you actually have a position of value, where you actually do provide value? One of the things I've noticed with regards to like a lot of these quote unquote influencers and these people that have millions of followers that are just doing basic shit, like if the algorithm didn't choose them, if some external bigger movement decided to push them away and say, hey, no one's going to view your shit anymore, how much would they be worth at that point? Like, how much value would they really have, and what value can they serve to the world? And I'm not saying that they can't, right? And I'm not saying that they don't. But if it wasn't for the platform, if it wasn't for an algorithm, if it wasn't for your ability to create some type of social media something, what would be your purpose in this world? What would be your value? What would be their value? But people don't think that way. People think, what can I do to follow the algorithm so that I can get famous and popular? And this is so fucking dangerous. This is so dangerous because all you're trying to do is validate yourself by an external source that's saying this is how you get validated. And that algorithm is controlled by someone else. It's controlled by some other narrative. It's controlled by whoever wants you to see this. And what scares me is because if you like look at like TikTok and you look at Instagram, and you look at Facebook and you see the reels and you see the quick little snippets, more and more men are being projected to be idiots. They're stupid all the time. They say, like, even the gym things, it's starting to get to a point where all you're trying to do is validate yourself from followers, views, and likes, instead of validating yourself from things that you've actually accomplished, things that are actually serving the world. And again, I'm not saying that your Instagram videos or your TikTok reels or whatever the fuck doesn't serve the world. But again, if it wasn't for the algorithm and if it wasn't getting likes and shares, what the fuck else would you be doing? And how could you serve the world? And it scares me because now you have these people who are completely validated by the algorithm, that their stuff shows up first on everybody's feed. And because of that, now they're soon to be experts. They're soon to have clout. They're soon to know what the hell they're talking about. And you're starting to see, well, at least I'm starting to see more and more influencers, quote unquote influencers, more and more coaches, more and more people having an opinion on experiences that they have no clue about. All they know is an impression that they've seen from a screen. And here's the thing about what I've learned in life up until now. There are certain experiences in life that go way beyond the lens, that go way beyond a screen. And to really have depth and understanding of those said experiences is to experience it, not listen to an influencer talking about it, not from a video that you just see. You have to experience it to understand the depth and actually get an expert advice. I learned this recently on the Alex Hormozy podcast or show. And he talks about the Dunning-Kruger effect, which is the more you learn in a specific skill, the more you realize that you don't know. You know, for me, for example, I thought bodybuilding and getting ready for a show was all about trying to bulk in the winter and try to lean down by summer to get ready for stage. And in a way it is, right? In a way it really is. But the specifics to actually get down and be successful in that venture, it's black and white different compared to what you think. And you won't know about it until you're actually competing. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because there are so many instances in my life that I see where people position themselves as an expert or position themselves as some type of guru in a field, and it's very obvious that they're not. I'm going to provide a couple examples here. For example, the first one I have, the GNC guy, right? How many times have you ever gone and walked into a GNC, had this really small, scrawny person behind the counter telling you what you need to do to get buff, what you need to do to get ripped, what you need to start supplements, start taking, and this is the supplement because of this, beta-alanine, that, and this, that, and the other. And they're trying to position themselves as if they're an expert, but then you look at them, you're like, all right, well, why aren't you doing that? Why don't you do this? And therefore, I immediately discredit them. Another example of this for me in my life, and that I constantly found myself not congruent with, was my time in the Navy as a Navy recruiter. Navy recruiters, there's an actual rate called NC, and they call Navy Career Council. And what they do is their sole job is to sell the Navy. Now, all of them have converted from like a regular rate in the Navy, but it's not uncommon to see people that were in whatever rate that they're in for like 6 or 7 months, and then all of a sudden become a recruiter for like 14, 15, 16 years. So their entire experience in the Navy is as a recruiter, is in an office. And I remember hearing some of these guys who have never seen the fleet, who've never been in their jobs, never been on a deployment, never did anything military-wise other than stand at attention for when they come to work, right? That's about the only thing they've done military-wise. But then they sell these kids on the Navy. Oh, you can do this in the Navy. You can go see Dubai. You can use this GI Bill benefit. You can go use this. You can see the world, and then you could do that over there. You can go see Australia. You could do this. Okay, well, have you done it? No. Then how the fuck do you know? How the fuck can you sell that? And I find that so not congruent, and it's a lack there of integrity, in my opinion. Selling people on things that you have no experience in. And this last example I have, and this is one of the bigger cringe ones. Like we're talking about the manosphere, like we're talking about the red blue pill and all that other stuff. One of the popular things that I'm starting to see more than anybody else, or more than anything else, is all these guys holding a microphone, going into social settings and asking women about this red pill, blue pill shit, trying to position themselves as some type of dating expert. Like, oh, what's your preference of this? What if that? And then they fucking get mad at the women or something about them answering truthfully. Like, well, don't you know this women do this, and that's why men feel like this. And it's just like this bitch fest 24/7. But because it fits the algorithm, it's what's popular. And because it fits an algorithm, all these rhetorics are just fucking sold as Bible, when in my experience of talking with people and everything, it's not true whatsoever. But these algorithms and these rhetorics are so fucking strong, and they're propagated so fucking much that I had a friend who has never had a serious girlfriend in his life. He's the furthest thing from anyone I would consider to be social from a dating aspect. And in the times that I've talked to him about women, he's always, in my opinion, come from a very scarce mindset, and always made it feel like the reason why you're single is because you can't pull anything and not being a choice. It's a very scarce mindset that it comes from. Now, mind you, he's a very smart, intellectual person. He gets human dynamics. He understands how emotions affect people and how it can affect how you show up. But he has now positioned himself as a dating coach. A guy who has, in my opinion, no real success with women, never had a serious girlfriend in that dynamic, has now positioned himself to sell his services to people who are trying to be in relationships. And what is he selling? He's selling everything he heard on social media, everything he sees on YouTube videos, everything that you fucking hear from manosphere things. But again, there are certain experiences that you have to actually experience to understand the depth of that understanding. Because yes, although I feel self-awareness, self-preservation, and self-involvement as a entity towards relationships with other people, there is an acute awareness that you have to have with how other people are responding in lieu of it, and in lieu to you, that you cannot just be taught through videos, through other people telling you what that is. Like, you have to experience it enough to understand what that means for you. And it blows my mind. It blows my mind on how people get to the assumption that they're experts or that they can speak highly about topics when they have no experience in and of itself. And therefore, why I'm bringing all this up, I want all of you, and I would encourage all of you, to look at the people that you're following on social media, the experts, the gurus, whatever it is, and ask if what they're selling, what they're promoting, what they're preaching about is actually congruent with themselves. And ironically, that's one of the things that's going to happen on this list of 5 attributes of what your network should be like. And yeah, I got to tell you, it's annoying and it's scary. And it's only scary because we are starting to now relegate like correspondence and attribute people with being right based off of an external validation that is only given off by an algorithm that someone else is controlling. Someone else says, hey, let's make this video popular for everybody. Let's make this whatever. And we have this herd-like mentality. We want to keep following what we want to hear. And especially with all the rhetorics and narratives that are being spread on social media, I could definitely tell you just got to be wary of what the hell you're registering to. Because it can be scary. Okay. Now, with that rant's all over, we are going to talk about the 5 qualities of people, for me, that I think are absolutely necessary in order for you to stay in your network. So a little bit about me. I think I talked about this before earlier, but I will still bring it up right now. I was in the Navy for 13 years. It afforded me the opportunity to live all the way across, all over the country, places such as South Carolina, Rhode Island, New Mexico, San Diego, Vegas. And then from there, I actually moved to Utah, then back to San Diego, then to LA. And now I'm back in the Inland Empire where I grew up. And it's interesting because I've literally, I spent 18 years in real life before I joined the Navy. And now it's been 18 years since then, and I moved back. And the amount of people that I've run into, and now I'm running into all over again, has kind of provided me with real depth with the kind of people that have either come and go in my life, or I've actually stayed. And I said, there, like I said, of the hundreds, thousands, whatever amount of people that I've met, there might be maybe 10 that I still keep in contact with actively. And as I was making this list, it really dawned on me because I was in San Diego last week and I was going to go back home. I travel a lot for work, but I actually waited a few hours to go see my buddy get off work and go hang out with him, have a couple of talks. And I don't do that for a lot of people, right? I would just be like, hey man, next time this. But because he's one of my best friends, he's been one of my boys since 2008, 2009. We've been just as close ever since. And then I noticed like there's a couple people from when I lived in Albuquerque and a couple people from when I was in the Navy. These are people that are still in my life, but then I still have friends that are come and go. But there's a couple of things I really wanted to emphasize with this, right, before I get into the list of 5. First one being, you are a reflection of the closest people in your life. I was in Vegas recently, and there's a couple of friends that I introduced together that I knew them at a certain point in my life. These are the couple of guys that have come and gone. And I noticed like, man, they're both really negative. They're both really sad about things, complaining about their life, not happy. You could definitely tell there's definitely a lot that's missing there. And I immediately found myself judging. Like, oh, that's what, that's where they're at in their life. I'm so happy and beyond. But I'm like, I really thought about it. I'm like, when I was close with both of them during that time and during those years, I was the same exact way. I wasn't really happy with where I'm at. I was a degenerate drunk. I complained a lot and I just was never accepting of my situation. And as soon as I really thought about the version of me that was still friends with them, and like, holy shit. And now here I am judging, like, that's not right. Understand, and it kind of brings me to my next point. I was going to talk about it later, but I'm talking about it now. Just because you feel like you've moved on from someone, just feel like, just because you're not congruent with their lifestyle, just because you disagree with them in a certain dynamic, it doesn't mean you're better than them. It doesn't mean that what they're saying is wrong. If there's one thing that I've kind of learned to accept is that everybody is actually right from their own perspective. And it might be wrong compared to what you believe, but in their own mindset, how they're responding, how they're reacting, how they're showing up is completely just. And it's not for any of us to judge, but I see it all the time, like, oh, I moved on from them. They ain't shit. Like, oh, this isn't serving me, and you move on. And you make them feel bad. Like, just because you move on from something or someone, it doesn't mean that you're better than or that they're less than. It just means you're taking another direction. We need to start normalizing that. We need to start normalizing the fact that just because you moved on from someone, it doesn't mean that they're bad. They might be bad for you, but that doesn't make them bad. And it doesn't make them irrelevant. It just means that, hey, you're just taking another focus in your life. But if all you're doing is focused on yourself and thinking it's about you, then you might think that they're not good for you and therefore that's all their value. But then I will also encourage the fact that if that's what your mindset is every single time you move on from someone, oh, fuck this guy, they don't know me, I'm moving on from you, blah, 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 blah. You should probably look into that, dude, because there's a lot of ego that's behind that statement. And there's a lot of just bullshit that comes along with that. And it takes a lot of work to get out of your head. But it's pretty clear that when it happens, like, my God, there's some shit you got to look into. Another thing with this, whoever you decide to keep in your life is completely up to you. I've seen it. I've seen the stories that people tell themselves about why they should keep someone in their life. We've been friends for 3 hours now. Oh my God, me and him like the same drink. Me and him did this, and this. Like, you have to really ask yourself, if that relationship isn't serving you, why are you keeping them around? I mean, it's just an honest question. Like, why? Ask yourself. Now, if the reasons far supersede whatever negativity you're getting from it, sure. Now, not every relationship is 100% perfect. But just make sure whatever it is, the benefits outweigh the cost. And no matter what you do, all the time. And last but not least with this, the qualities that I'm going to bring about, this isn't something that I'm just like, these are the 5 qualities I want and I'm going to look for them. This is me being 36, having the experiences that I've had, being in the certain pressure situations that I've had. This is just, if I were to take a look at all of the close friends that are still in my life, that remain in my life, these are the commonalities amongst all of them. Now, mind you, they're not, I don't know, they might be different for you, right? I would hope so, right? Everybody values things that are significantly different, and everybody values things based off of their own personal experience. And that's why it's also really incumbent upon you to look into what attributes you value and also why. It's just a better understanding of yourself. And again, when I talk about these qualities, a lot of these are going to come with some stories, but it's how you learn. You learn from experience. You don't learn from fucking social media and some guru trying to tell you how to live. You don't do it by projecting all your insecurities and your bullshit onto other people. What you do is you look into what it is that you value and why. All right. So the first of these qualities for me in my network that attributes to my net worth is all of my very close friends are all fitness oriented. This is important because I very much value my fitness. I very much value eating correctly, working out, and setting a time aside for all of that. Because again, I am very astringent on the fact that I view how you treat your body and how you treat yourself is a reflection of your own self-worth. And I have, I find because I'm on a very strict diet, because I have very strict goals, when I go out into places, a lot of people are like, oh, you can take a cheat meal. Oh, just have a salad. Oh, one drink isn't going to hurt. But it's like, if I have a competition here in 2 weeks, like I do, I want my friends to be like, dude, you have a competition in 2 weeks. What the fuck are you doing? Why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you doing that? And that kind of all goes into holding each other accountable. In my experience of people that have fitness as a priority, they hold themselves accountable more than just eating and working out and supplements. Like they're usually family oriented as well. They put themselves as a priority. They have other goals for which they're aspiring to do. The majority of them, right? I'm not saying every meathead in the gym, everything has bigger goals than just working out. I'm just saying the friends that I have that are close, they're all fitness oriented. And usually when I go visit them, and every time I go to Albuquerque, or every single time I go to New York now, the first place I usually go with those respective set friends is the gym. We get that gym out of the way. We make the gym a priority, and we enjoy working out together. These are things that I've always known, or I've always valued. And because when you have other people that value the same thing, which is self-investment and self-preservation, that energy definitely manifests and transfers between people. The second quality that I've had, or that I value, is how people speak highly of one another in public. Now, I'm going to provide two examples for this, and they're going to be contrasted from one another, but you'll see why I'd rather have one and not the other. How many of you have ever been in a social setting where, for me, like me and my boys out, like I don't know, the club, but definitely in a social setting where there's other girls. And while you're trying to interact, trying to get to know them, all of a sudden you have a friend that just talks shit about you to try to make themselves look better in front of them. For those of you who have experienced that, how did that make you feel? How did that affect your relationship with that said person? I remember this specific moment where I was staying with a buddy of mine in Vegas, and he left me with some girls that I just really didn't like. I got her number, talked for a little bit. I'm like, this doesn't, whatever. I went and met him at home later on, because he ended up picking some other girl, and then he just was up there. But then as soon as I show up to his house and we're hanging out, he just throws me, oh, why didn't you pull that? Oh, you're a bitch. You're a pussy in front of this other girl. You could tell he's just putting on a show. And I'm saying, I'm like, dude, you already pulled this girl. Why are you doing this? Why is it that you have to throw me under the bus to try to make you look good? Now, mind you, that turned into an argument later on. I ended up leaving and never seeing that. I haven't hung out with that guy since. But I remember in years past, I've had friends like this, and I kind of still hung out. But then you realize, like, wait, why do I want to be around people that want to talk shit about me? That doesn't make any sense, especially in front of other people. Like, why would you do that? And here's the thing, guys. If you ever feel like you have to impress women by shitting on your fucking friends, A, it says a lot about who the fuck you are. And B, most good women don't want to be around that insecure ass shit. It's insecure as fuck, right? Now, let's contrast that to another one of my buddies, my buddy Norman, who I've interviewed on this show before. I remember one time, or the most recent time that I went to the club with him, we were at Omnia at Caesars. Got a table for his birthday, and this one girl comes over to our table, starts sitting next to me, and we're vibing, having a really good time. And then Norman comes over because it's his birthday, and he just goes, "Oh, hey, you met my friend Alan. He's this, and this. I work for him. He's like, he's this, that, this bad." And they just hyped me the fuck up. And you could see her just getting all, "Oh, wow, this guy's a somebody I'm talking to." And I'm like, "Hey, man, thanks. Appreciate that." And it definitely helped my situation out a lot more. And those are the kind of people you want around you. Norman's one of my bros. I trust him to death. I hopefully don't have to come back and make another one of this episode and edit that out. But Norman is one of those guys where if we're out in public, he will hype you up. He will always hype you up. And here's the thing, though, right? And here's the thing with all of me and my buddies. We will speak so highly of one another in public. We will always give each other our due. We will always like, "Hey, this guy's doing this. Holy shit, you're lucky to be hanging out with my boy." But behind closed doors, we'll talk mad shit. We'll fucking talk mad shit. We'll talk about how bad you play in poker, how ripped you're not compared to me. We'll do all that stupid. Boys will be boys. But in public, we will always praise each other in public. And I would encourage you to find people that are proud to have you as a friend and brag about you. And I'll tell you, the more you make it about and especially in a social setting, if you make it more about the internal energy between you and your friends, more people want to gravitate towards that. You'll never have to project it onto anybody else to accept it. People will go to you. So there's that. The third attribute. So the first one I said is fitness oriented. The second one, they speak highly of you in public. The third one, kind of harped about this before. My biggest grinding my gears of content. And that is being authentic. Live by their words. It's hard for me to respect people that don't live by their word. Like I said, my friend who just became a dating coach. I remember conversations with them, past girlfriends that I've had in other social settings. And mind you, I haven't known him for very long, but I remember he would give, like, for example, I remember there was this one time I left the gym. There's one cute girl I wanted to talk to, and I'm like, "Nah, I'm really busy. I'm booked for the next month with work and other stuff. So I don't really even want to entertain that." They goes, "Why not? Like you're single because of this. And, you can't just be lonely forever, blah, blah, blah." I'm like, "Whoa, lonely?" And like, yeah, sure. I didn't want to talk to her, but me being single has nothing to do with me not being able to attract women. Or does it come from a lack thereof self-confidence? It just time schedule. I don't like talking to people and then leaving them hanging for a month. That's just not what I do. And again, and also there's plenty of fucking women out in the world, man. There's sure, might miss that opportunity, but there's a million other ones. But imagine me completely disagreeing with him, because I don't think you can date with the scarce mindset. It's not beneficial, in my opinion. And in all reality, he doesn't believe in it either. But then all of a sudden, when he sells his services as a dating guru and a dating expert and how to show up and maintain a relationship, I can't get behind it. I can't get behind the fact you're selling people on a narrative that you don't, or that you are not congruent with. And then I can't get behind the fact that you're not selling people based off of them actually trying to serve them, is trying to validate your narrative about dating. And I'm not going to, like I said, I can't get behind that. I cannot get behind that. It's I don't know. It's like, for example, like when it comes to working out and getting ready for competitions, some people go completely sober. And although I will agree that, hey, alcohol is a detriment. I can't tell you to go completely sober because I still drink here and there. I still have, now mind you, these last couple of weeks before comp, no, being sober, 100%. But I've definitely had a drink like 5 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago. I can't sit here and just be like, you cannot drink, blah, blah, blah. Like, no, I'm not congruent with that. I'd be lying. So therefore, when I have people around me that preach about certain principles that they live on, you better be living by it congruently. You better be authentic with it. You better be authentic to your word. Because otherwise, how do I know what you're telling me is the truth? How do I know that you're showing up for me authentically if you're not going to actually be about your word? And that's what kind of scares me with that. All right, the fourth one that I have that I value in my group of friends, in my network, is that all of them have their own opinion. And we can all agree to disagree on a regular basis. Like, I think the most common thing we could talk about is like politics. It's pretty divisive with regards to opinions. I don't talk politics with people because I hate walking on eggshells while speaking my truth. And those eggshells has nothing to do with what I'm saying, but rather how people are choosing to take what I'm saying. You know, like, for example, like how many times, like, I like the color blue. We have now been trained to like, well, what the fuck is wrong with red? Blah, blah, like, whoa. You know, I just like blue. There's nothing wrong with the other, but because we're in this bipartisan mindset, we have this like one or the other. You know, that's why it's hard for me to converse with people on a regular basis about things that are controversial. But with the people that I have in my friend circle, I have people from all political spectrums and all different kinds of beliefs. Politics is just one thing, right? There's also sports and dating and all these other different approaches. But we all respect each other and their points of view. I think because of the fact that, you know, when you are authentic with who you are, when you can preach about the good things about the people you keep around you, while holding each other accountable, like these attributes, like how could I not think that what you're saying is authentic coming from you? How can I not respect what you got to say? Because if you exhibit a congruent lifestyle, then there's something that you believe to be true, and it's true. And now with that being said, we can agree to disagree, but that doesn't mean we choose to disagree. It's looking at what the other person is saying and be like, you know what? Even though I can see where you're coming from, I disagree. And there's actually a lot of moments where in these kind of conversations where someone will change my perspective. Like, you know what? I think you're right. And I think it's more right than what I'm saying. And therefore I might go with what you're saying instead of what I'm saying. And that's really important because we have to be able to give each other the space to be our authentic selves without judgment, understanding that we all have a different upbringing. We all have a different set of circumstances and different sets of adversity for which we've learned. And therefore, it's really selfish and wrong for me to tell you that you are wrong on a perspective that you have if I'm only projecting it from what I know. Again, the last episode we talked about solipsism. Solipsism is thinking that everybody just shares your perspective and it's the only perspective that exists. And I'll definitely tell you that that's not really a good idea. If you really want to be tolerant, if you want other people to give you the space to share your beliefs without having to walk on eggshells, you got to provide the same space for others. Now, just because you provide the same space for others, it doesn't mean that you're going to get the same space in return. But that's exactly why when it comes to choosing who you want to network with and choosing who you want to associate with, having this as an attribute is really important. All right, so we have gone through 4 out of 5 of them. I'm going to go over real quick before I go over the last one. And the last one I promise you're going to like. The first one is fitness orientated. because, in my opinion, it holds everybody accountable. Second one, you speak highly of one another in public, which congruent with that, sometimes you speak shit about each other in public or in private. Oh, another thing I wanted to add in that. I heard recently that the reason why we are so prone to, when it comes to men, like speaking shit about each other. Like, for example, a couple of my workout buddies will be messaging each other about, hey, what's this? What's that? How can this bench be better? Or how can this rep be better? And it's like, for example, with like me and my buddy Juan, I'll be like, oh yeah, it's because you're a small bitch. And he's not small at all, but it's just us talking shit, us just giving each other crap. And I heard, in which this makes sense, men do that because we subconsciously need to know that when shit hits the fan and you face some kind of adversity, that you're able to shake it off and move forward and not let it affect you. Like, in other words, when we go to war, we go to battle and shit hits the fan, I can count on you to still fight forward. One of my old roommates, I remember, he forgot to wash a pan and just kind of left it out there. And I come like, hey man, dude, are you going to clean up after yourself? And instead of realizing or reflecting on what he did was right or wrong, he goes, you don't have to yell at me like that, man. And just walks away. I'm like, the hell, for holding you accountable for things that you're supposed to be doing? That, and I can't get behind that. I can't get around people not taking responsibility for their own fucking actions and then getting upset for being told to be held accountable for it. Like, is my comment really what matters here, or is the fact that you aren't taking care of your shit? And I need to know, especially with people that I decide to keep with me, that, hey, if shit hits the fan, I can trust you to fucking show up and not let your fucking feelings take over. Oh, and the last thing, oh my God, this is important. This is so fucking important. I hate the fact that I even have to say this. But when you have a group of friends, when you have your network, when you have people that you trust, they cannot try to fuck a girl. And I know that's aggressive. And here's the congruent thing, right? And if your girl's trying to fuck them, that's another thing. But I cannot begin to tell you how many times I've been in settings, and these aren't like my close friends. These are just friends of friends. We're in a circle, we're out, and I'm talking to some pretty girl. And while I'm like gone, like I go to the bathroom or something like that, some other guy would try to slide in and talk. And then all of a sudden I show up and they kind of move away. They know that they're doing something fucked up. Or they add my girl on Instagram. They DM them certain things and try to be friends with them. That is so disrespectful, in my opinion. And I've definitely had friends, quote unquote friends, where as soon as I was not in the picture physically, they try to make a move. They try to do something. And it's like, oh, I'm just trying to be cool, bro. I'm just like, no, I fucking can see what you're doing. That is so disrespectful. It's like low-hanging fruit. And I don't even think I have to say it. I don't even think I have to. I'm not going to even say it. Like, straight up, if you have someone that is trying to like fuck your ex or trying to fuck your current girl, trying to be cool with them, are really weird in social settings and try to make it about them, then fuck, dude, you need to really look into that, because that's some really fucked up shit. I cannot begin to tell you how annoying that is. And it's like, bro, how insecure do you have to fucking be to try to fuck one of your friends' girlfriends? It's just so disrespectful, so beyond just, ugh. But you see it all the time. I can't. I've seen friend groups where these guys are boys, and one of them is literally dating the other's most recent ex. I don't know. I don't know where that comes from. I don't know how you can stand like, oh yeah, you know, those the same girl I was talking to like 3 weeks ago, but now you got to know, just pass her on. Like, yeah, I don't know, man. All I know is if you're my brother, you're my brother, and I need to be able to trust you to watch over me, watch over anyone or anything that's associated with me like it was yours, but not in the sense of actually pursue it like it's yours. There's a huge difference. And if you cross that boundary with me, then I will never be able to trust you. And here's the thing is, anytime you do any of these things that kind of cross the line, it's gone. The trust is gone. I will never be able to trust you again. And I'll definitely tell you that like a lot of the people that I've dropped out of my life fit one of these categories in some dynamic. Again, there's more to this list, but I kind of had to make it down to 5 because I don't want this episode to go for 4 hours long, because there's a lot of other attributes that I agree and disagree with. But to recap again, the 5 qualities that I highly recommend that you should look into for your network and for your net worth. They got to be fitness oriented. They speak highly of one another in public. They're authentic, aka they live by their words. They have their own opinion and they can agree to disagree, which also means you can have your own opinion and you can agree to disagree. They allow you to be yourself. And then last but not least, they don't try to fuck your girlfriend. Oh man, really interesting list, right? It was interesting because that last one, the whole fuck your girlfriend thing, that's just, man, I can't begin to tell you. It was just so annoying when that happens. Anyways, all right, guys, I hope you guys really enjoyed this list. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Again, be wary of the shit that you're following on social media. Be wary of the messages, the rhetorics, the labels, everything that's being spread across, and making sure it's actually congruent with the truth and the truth that you want, not a version of the truth that you want to deflect and accept because it makes you feel better. All right, guys, hope you guys really enjoyed this episode. If you guys like it, like, follow, subscribe, share with anybody that you can feel can benefit from this. And until next time, love you guys all. Deuce.